Hey, it's Jesse Cervantes with Creative Congo, and today we are looking at this, which is sort of doing the flat 3D style animation using Element 3D. Now, I'm using Element and also Particular for the smoke and for the stars in the background. But making flat 3D look in Element is actually really fast and really easy. And in a lot of cases, well, in some cases, it can be more useful or at least easier than doing it in Cinema 4D. But it's just a matter of what you're in the mood for and what you're trying to do. In this case, it worked really nice in Element, so I thought I would share the experience. Now, there's a lot of little tricks and stuff we're going to do, but I'll try to quickly just show you how to get the flat 3D look, because that's really fast and easy, and if that's all you want, you can just stop watching it right after that. So make a new comp, 1280 by 720, and Command Y to make a new background, and we'll just make that sort of a dark blue. And then we'll make Command Y, and we'll call this element, because that'll be our element layer. And then come to our effects, add element, and we're almost ready to go. So I do have an earth texture, so I have an earth map, and I have a planetary texture, which I'm going to use for the moon. So first I'm going to pre-comp both of these, Shift Command C, and go to Planet Texture, Shift Command C. You don't absolutely have to pre-comp these, but I'm going to show you why it's a good idea. So for a sphere to map properly, it really needs to be exactly twice as wide as it is tall. So I'm going to go to Command K and make this 1000 by 500 pixels. Because it's 1000 by 500, exactly twice as wide as it is tall, it'll map perfectly to the sphere. So I'm just going to move this sort of into place, and there we go. So that'll work for the Earth, and come back over here to my original comp, go to my planet, and Command K, and also make that, well, it's 1600 by 800, so that'll work fine. It's twice as wide as it is tall. This is made to order. So go back to my comp, turn these off, and move them underneath. Go to my element layer, and add my custom layers, custom texture maps. I'll make number 1 my world map, and number 2 my planet texture. Then I'll go into element, and let's get started. So we come to the primitives and find my HD sphere, hit it 1, 2, 3 times. So, and I'll move these to separate channels. This is going to be my sun, my earth, and my moon. So getting the flat 3D look, all you got to do is pick your diffuse color. I like to do it in diffuse. It works really well in Element. And just go to your ambient and turn that up to like 20. And you can see we're getting pretty close already. So there's all these extra sort of stuff happening. Just go to your diffuse, turn that down to 0. Go to your specular, turn that down to 0. And you can see that's gone. Your shininess, you can't take that down totally to 0, but it'll go pretty close. And then your reflection to 0. And now, it looks like just a yellow circle. And that's what we're looking for. So I'll go to my next material. I'll load in the texture of my world map. And there we go. So this doesn't look like we want, but you see quickly if we go to ambient, turn that up to 20, this turns white like we want it, or like the actual map looks. Okay, so, and there it is. Now, obviously we don't want this to be black and white, but we'll take care of that in just a second. We're going to go to my next material, go to diffuse settings, load the texture of the planet. Okay, turn this ambient up to 20, turn the diffuse down, turn the specular down. All I'm doing is clicking and hitting 0, and turn the intensity of that down. And now this looks like pretty much flat too. Now this is a pretty good map. When they gave me the texture, it looked like this, but I'm going to show you something real quick as a tip. So let's say, I can scale this up just a little bit. Let's say that this is what it was like, and then you come into your element, and then it looks like this and it has the seam. So then you have a problem. So we can come back into my planet texture, and I'm going to do a few things. First thing I'm going to do is I don't want this thing to be orange. So I'm going to come over here and do the tint effect. And that kind of works, but you see the moon is more sort of white or maybe even blue depending on your mood. And there's no real white here. And it's not going to happen because I've already mapped my white to white. And if I started moving this up, it just sort of washes everything out. So what I like to do in a case like this where I have an item that I want to colorize my own way, and it's only going to be 2 colors, I'll go to the levels, I'll put on a tint, add the levels, and when you come into the levels, you see here, this is our white, and there's like no white. But if I take this and just move it over, you can see the white coming in, and now we have plenty of white. And I can do the same thing with the black and move that over. So now we got a lot of black and a lot of white, like actual black and actual white. Then I come over here and add another tint effect, and I'll make this sort of just a very light blue, and then I'll make the black like a really dark blue, and that looks alright. And then I'm gonna come over here and add an effect called mirror. So this is what I was getting at earlier. If I move you can see I can mirror this thing perfectly. So if I put this at the direct center of the comp at 800, then I've mirrored it so that each of the other sides match. Now this does look a little bit like a Rorschach test or something, but if I scale this down or scale it, you can have some control over ultimately how it'll map. But the important thing is that the right side and the left side are exactly the same, and if I come over here and go back into Element Now, you can see our moon is perfectly mapped because of the mirror effect. So the right side and the left side look the same so that they match perfectly. One last thing, come over here to my world map, and this is black and white, which I don't want, so again I'll add a tint effect. It's one of my favorite things to do in After Effects because you bring it into here and you don't really know always exactly what color you're going to end up with. Either the client will change it or you'll change your mind, and having to go back into Illustrator or Photoshop and change the color there can be a little bit annoying. So as much as I can, I bring things into After Effects as a black and white, and then I'll color it here. That way I can just quickly change it anytime I want to. So I'm going to come back into Element. You see we have our 3 pieces and they look the way we want them to. And that's it. So that's it for creating the flat 3D look. So let's set up the scene real fast. Rather than make a world transform null, rather than try to control each of these through the groups, it's faster for me, I believe, to just create a group null. So I'm going to create a group null for group 1, and then I'll come up here and rename that Sun. And then I'll come over here to group null create, and I'll name that one Earth. And then I'll come over here and do the third one and call that one Moon. So I'll come to my Sun, I'll make that, I can scale it down to 40. I'll go to my Earth, scale that down to say 20, and I'll go to my Moon and scale that down to 5. Then I'll position my Earth to the right, and I'll position my I'll position my Moon to the right of that. Now I want the Earth to spin, I want the Moon to spin, I want the Moon to spin around the Earth, I want the Earth to spin around the Sun. So the obvious thing is to make a daisy chain. So let's do that really quick. So I linked my Earth to my Sun to my Moon, and then I'll go to my rotation, and the Y rotation is the thing that's spinning it around. So I'll just hit Option click, time times 150. Now if you want to get real scientific, I could do this by 360 and etc., but 365. So there it is. So the Earth's spinning around the Sun. That's what we want. And I'm even going to go to the X and sort of move it down this way just a little bit so that it kind of goes like this. That might be a little bit too much. Something like that. Alright, that's not bad. Now what we have here is that the Earth is starting over here, and I actually want to start on the other side. So if I come into my expression and I type the word value at the beginning, plus, value is what the actual number is. So right now the actual number is 0. If you just have the expression, you can't control that. But if you add value, it allows you to control the actual number. So right now the actual number is negative 200. When I let go and move this, you see it starts to calculate from that negative 200 and move over. So, that's how that works. I'm going to take this back to 0 for just a second. Go to my Earth, rotate, and I'll make that time times, let's say 100. I'm putting the semicolon, you don't have to. And now the Earth is spinning and the moon's spinning around the sun. The moon's spinning around the Earth, so that's good. And then I actually want my moon to spin on its own. So I'll times, 50 on that. Okay, this is looking good, but I want the moon to spin faster than the Earth is spinning. Right now the moon is spinning exactly the same speed as the Earth. So when I set this up initially, I did it for a project and I had all the planets. And it got really complicated really fast. So I'm just going to show you how I work that out. If I go to the Earth and I duplicate that null, and then I rename that moon spinner, and I take the moon spinner, connect that to the Earth, and then connect the moon to the moon spinner, then I can add to this time, make it like time times 500. So now the moon is attached to the moon spinner, which is going around the Earth 500 times every time the Earth spins. So now you can see it's going much faster. So this is how you would sort of daisy chain all the planets if you wanted to sort of do it in that way. And there we have our basic setup. So here we go. So not bad. Now I want to go ahead and add the rocket ship. So I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to come to my sun rotation, and I want to start on this side so that it goes just a little bit, and then at like roughly a second and a half, that's where, so it'll sort of do that. Maybe the moon's going a little bit too fast. And this is where you sort of, maybe 500 was a little bit too much. So, that's how that works. So now let's talk about our rocket ship. So I got my rocket ship from TurboSquid, and they have lots of free spaceships that you can grab, and they're really good. And here's the one I actually used, and you can see right here it was created by Solancia, and you can download it as a Cinema 4D file, and it goes right into Element and works perfectly. So I'm going to go back into Element. I'm going to do just a quick save and come to my models, scroll down to sort of make these subcategory, and there's my rocket ship. So the first thing is, if I go to my grid, you can see that the grid is not really in the center of the model, and that will definitely be a problem when I'm trying to fly the ship and steer it if it's coming from here. So if I move this to channel 4 first of all, and come to the anchor point, and instead of doing model center, do from model, and that moves it right to the center of the model. So that works just great. And I actually would like it to be at the bottom, because I'm going to link the smoke particles to this null that is controlling the ship. So I'm going to move that down so I can set the anchor offset right here to be right at the bottom of the spaceship. So that's where the anchor point will be on the ship. So that's a really nice thing that we can set up an element. So let's texture this real fast. Sky, we don't need a sky. Metal is the actual body, so it's already white. So I'm just going to turn this up to 20 like we did before. Turn everything else off. Go to the, now originally I textured this red, that's why I called this red, but I'm going to make it green today. And that's fine. And again, turn this down. Now, you can see as I turn this up slowly, and if I turn this back up, you can have some slight shadowing if you wanted to. If you don't want to go full on, absolute, like total flat you know, you can get a little bit of shading in here. It doesn't give you quite like the cell shading look, and maybe you can play around with that and get that. But you know, it's not bad. It works good for me. The last thing is the windows, and I'll make those like a light blue, like a really light blue. And again, turn this up to 20, and you see right away we have that. Hit OK. So now we're going to go to group 4 and create a group null for that. And we'll call this one rocket. And position that over here. So this is where I want the rocket ship to take off. Now right now it looks like more or less that it's on top of the Earth. I'm going to go down here too and take this down to like 10%, so it's pretty small. But we want to be sure, or at least relatively sure. And so I'm going to come over here to my view. Instead of doing one view, I'm going to do 4 views. And I'm going to handle this very much like I would in Cinema 4D. So here's my right, here's my front, and here's my top. So go to my top and make that. Command plus can make this a little bit bigger for you. So if I go to here, I can see that my rocket is pretty far behind the Earth, and I want to be, I want to be right on there. So it's going to take off basically from here, and Shift R, and I'm going to leave the rotation alone for now. I'm just going to mess with the positions. So I'm going to hit Shift Command right arrow to go up 10, and I'll go to my front view, and I'm going to have the ship go up and start moving forward. Make sure it's in front of the sun, and then from the top I'll even pull it further, and then I'll go Shift Command right arrow to go up 10 more, and then from the top I'm going to have it even go further up, much further up. And what I can do here is my active camera here. You know, what I can do also is adjust the scale. So I'm going from 10 to now at 100. You can see the ship is much bigger. I'll go to the right 10 more, and if you hit the space bar, you can move this thing, the window. So I'm going to move this way up forward again, and from the front I want to move it down, and probably to the right a little bit more, and then have it go up to, let's say, 150. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty decent start. So what I want now is to set the rotation of the object to look like it's following the path. So the first thing I need to do is, now one thing you want is to sort of look at the paths themselves. Like here there's like a big twist happening, and that's not great. So if we can sort of just play with that a little bit, and maybe we'll move this back just a little bit. So the idea is to, as much as you can, sort of make the trajectory relatively even. So it's sort of an arc here, there's sort of an arc here, sort of an arc here. And you can just play with these a little bit to smooth them out, and that'll just make the flying look a little bit better. And so now I'm going to change the X rotation. Oops, I'll change this. So it's going to take, this is where like you get a little bit of the, so I hit here, go to the first one, and make sure that it's following the path, being aware of where it's going to go next. So you can see it's flying out, following the path, and then it's coming towards us, and then I'm going to have it go sort of to the right and up, oops, and up. And you can see from our active camera that we're getting really close to what we want. And we'll go over 10 more, And here I'm just going to sort of use the active camera to bring this much further up in Z space to the right. Oops, let me get down. Go up and over. And then I'll sort of turn the ship. So this is a little bit of the tweaking, and so this can take a few minutes, and there might be a faster way, but this is just the way that's going to work for me right now. So I'll move this ship back a little bit. Basically, I want it to get to a spot where this just pure white. So we're pretty close, and there it is. And so hit in, and let's sort of just watch this to see what the animation does. Alright, so it's not too bad. It's not perfect, but it's relatively close. So you can come over here and hit a F9, get it to smooth that out just a little bit. Here you might want to come right in the middle a little bit and just sort of get that transition to start happening a little bit faster. So now I did try doing like a follow path, you know. Okay, so next thing is if you hit all of the keyframes and then hold down the option, you can move this to the right. And I'm gonna make everything move a little bit faster. So now it's gonna happen in just under a second, and that'll help. So you don't notice all the little things that go wrong. Right around here, I might just dump this, and in fact go back to, I'm hitting command to go back to regular keyframes. That might actually work a little bit better. So the only thing that looks like it's happening right here is if I go to the top, I might want this to go a little bit further out. Alright, and then now obviously I could play with this and tweak it for 7 or 8 minutes. It wouldn't take too much longer to tweak this thing and make it look really good, but because I don't want this tutorial to be eternal, I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. One thing I would do is right here with the rocket ship, go to my scale, go back 1 frame, take the scale to 0, and in fact I'll move this up a few frames. And I'm holding the option right arrow to move that keyframe by itself so that the rocket is not there prior to the Earth arriving, and then the rocket takes off from the Earth as it arrives. Now you might notice here I don't have the ambient up totally as high as it could be, so I kind of like this to give it a little bit of just a hint of depth. Even though we're sort of sticking with the flat 3D, I'm going to come back to take it off 4 views and go to my regular active view camera. And so essentially this is it for setting this thing up. Now the next part, so I'm going to have to, it scales up too slow, so I'm going to move this back and just have it be there. And instead of being at 10, I'll make it at 5. There we go. Alright, so it kind of goes up to here really fast, so maybe we just sort of move these back just a hint. Last thing, adding particular. So I'm going to try to do this kind of fast, hopefully. So I'm going to do Command Y, particle stars, and then I'll come over here and add particular. And I'll move this above the background, but behind the thing and behind the sun element. And now you can see the stars there. If you come to your presets, now if you don't see the presets, this happened to me a couple of times, especially when I updated to CC 2014. if you do not see the presets, there's actually, you can type in on Red Giant, there's an article here that shows you how to do it. Just come up here and click Show Animation Presets. Then you have to go to your effects and presets and click on Refresh List, and that'll add it. If you do that and it's still not there, it means you got to go into your application and make sure that the particular presets are in the preset folder. Come over here to Star Field Static 2, hit U. So that makes it happen right off the bat. So we'll come back. Now this is way too many, so I'm going to just hitting the plus sign to expand my timeline, and come over here and instead of it being 5,000 or 50,000, I'm going to make it 10, so there'll be a lot less stars. So you can see there's still kind of some weird stuff happening as I move through the timeline. If you start changing these presets around and you're getting weird stuff, all you gotta do is come into the particle and go to the random seed. Where is that? Random seed here that's under emitter, and just move that around, and then everything should work correctly. So this is still a little bit more stars than I want, so I'm going to come over here to 10,000 and make it 5. And I'm actually going to move this physics time factor back so that it doesn't take quite as long. I'll play with the random seed. Still a little bit more than I want, so I'm going to come down here and make this 1,000. And then I'll play with the random seed again until it looks a little bit more like what I'm hoping for. And I'm actually going to move this over here a little bit more. I kind of like the way that looks. And I'll go to my sphere feather. I'll make that 0 since we're going for this look. I'm going to make this 3, my size, and my size random. I'll take to 50. And then now I get a little bit more different kind of stuff. I'm going to make this down to 800. Play with the random seed one more time until I get something that, okay, so this will do. And so now I have my static field. I'm just going to move that layer back so it's already started by the time the timeline starts, and we're already there. So there I have my stars in the background. And finally, setting up the rocket ship. Go to my rocket, U to see my keyframes, so they're going to start right here. So basically all I got to do is come to my layer, new, light, and I'm going to name the light emitter with a capital E, and immediately that happens. So I got to come back into element, go to my render settings, go to lighting, turn off use comp lights, on add lighting, go default lights, and then you're back to where you started, and then the lights won't affect element. So I'm going to set up another particular. So I'm going to take this position right here. Oops. Command C. Go to position here. Command V. So now it's in the exact same position. Then I'm just going to chain that emitter to the rocket. And so now the emitter follows the rocket. And then I'll come up here, Command Y, and call that smoke. And then I'll add particular. And then I'll go to my emitter, make it a light, and turn the velocity down to 0. I'll leave velocity random on, distribution, velocity from motion, but I'll turn everything else up down to 0. And I'll change the particle from sphere to cloudlet, turn the cloudlet feathering down to 0, and immediately you can see that we have it working on the trail. Obviously that's not going to work, so you have to move the smoke behind the element layer so it stays behind, and then we'll turn this up to about 200. maybe 300, and we'll change the life to 0.5 so that we have trails. We'll change the size to 10, but we can make it, give it some randomness, 25, and then size over life, we'll just make like a little arc going down like this so that it disappear and die, smooth out as they grow older. And in fact, instead of going 0.5, we might go to 0.4. I'm doing this a little bit fast, and I kind of apologize for that, but this, I think, has been a relatively long tutorial. And so, you know, that's it. I mean, that's it. It could be smoother. It could be better. Last thing, I'm going to come to my emitter, option, open bracket. I'm going to do the same thing on my smoke, option, open bracket. So that way it doesn't start until it takes off, just like the rocket doesn't start. Last little thing, you know, right here, I'm going to go Command Y. I'm going to put a white solid and have that come on the top so that it takes over. So when the rocket appears onto the screen, which actually happens right here, then that solid just takes over. And then I'll just come over here and type Creative Congo. I'll make it green. If I was going to get real specific, I'd probably copy the exact green of the rocket ship, but for now, and then I'll make that 3D. AA for light settings, accepts lights off, so now it doesn't accept lights, and position 360, oops, 640, so it's right in the center. Scale it up to maybe 250, and then I'll even move this a little bit closer up here, so I'm using, and then rotation, come back here, make this -3, and so now it sort of spins on you a little bit fast. I'll come over here to the map and make it, ease it, and pull this way back, pull this way up, so that now it'll sort of, you know, slowly stop. So as soon as this comes in, bam. We'll take the opacity, Shift T, option right arrow to move that over just a couple, turn it down to 0, turn on the motion blur, and so that's, you know, that's sort of how that little fake transition happened. So hopefully this was useful and you learned a few tips and tricks for playing with particular, playing with element, and so here's our animation that we just made together. Yay! And here's the original one where I put a little bit more time into making the rocket ship fly correctly. There it goes. Oh, look at that. Whoa! So that one was a little bit smoother. So, you know, it depends on how you're doing it. Hey, man and women. I'm Jesse Cervantes with Creative Congo. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Bye.